You awaken before the sun. Not from peace, not from a dream, but from the same cruel fire that has gripped your foot for weeks now. It begins as a dull throb, almost like a heartbeat trapped inside your bones. Then it flares, a sudden spike of pressure that shoots through your ankle like a hot nail. The pain demands your full attention, pulling you from the shallow warmth of your bed into the raw, gray edge of consciousness. You don't move. Not yet. Experience has taught you that movement invites agony. The covers, heavy wool and lined with fox fur, weigh down on your leg like chains. Beneath them, your right foot is swollen, angry, and twice the size it should be. Even the softest touch is unbearable. Your breath catches in your throat as you inch your left leg away, creating space between your limbs like a soldier retreating from a battlefield. Your chambers are silent, save for the faint whistle of wind through the narrow glass slits high on the wall. Outside, the world is still asleep. But inside, your body is awake, alert to every pulse, every flicker of pain, every nerve that fires like a torch. You stare up at the canopy of your bed, thick oaken beams, carved with vines and Latin script you once found elegant. Now, they are merely something to look at while you endure. Your name is William Thornbrook, Lord of Elmwick, son of Geoffrey the Tall, holder of 6,000 acres and vassal to the Earl of Kent. Your estate boasts over 40 servants, 2 chaplains, 3 blacksmiths, and a physician trained in Oxford. You have 5 dogs, 2 falcons, and a horse that cost more than most men's homes. And yet here you are, bound to your bed by a foot. Your pain has made you slower. You think differently now. Simpler. More focused. In years past, you would have summoned the houseboys by now, pounded the brass bell that sits beside your goblet, but today you linger in your thoughts. Not out of nobility, but necessity. Calling them would mean moving. And movement is pain. You close your eyes again, breathing deeply through your nose. The air carries hints of burning peat and chamber pot vinegar. You recognize the scent of boiled linen and rosemary. It must be Marta, your chambermaid, washing sheets 2 doors down. You try to imagine the day ahead. Today, you are expected to receive Lord Swan, a minor noble with ambitions larger than his inheritance. He is visiting to discuss your grain tariffs, though he'll likely spend more time boasting of his hunting dog's bloodline than discussing trade. Tonight, there is to be a feast in his honor. Venison, duck, honey-roasted almonds, white bread, and cherry preserves. You'll be seated at the center, in your gilded chair with the crest of Thornbrook behind you. You will smile. You will lift your goblet. You will hide your grimace when your foot is accidentally bumped under the table. This is the life of a nobleman. But it is not a life free of suffering. The knock comes softly, as always. 3 polite taps. Then silence. You do not answer right away. You count your breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then, in a low voice, hoarse from sleep, you say, "Enter." The door creaks open. Thomas, your body servant, steps in, gray-haired, small-eyed, hands always fidgeting. He carries your robe over one arm and a pitcher of warm water in the other. "My lord," he whispers, eyes immediately flicking to your foot, still buried under covers. The house is beginning to stir. "Shall I prepare your garments?" You nod once. A movement small enough not to hurt. Thomas crosses the room with careful steps, his boots whispering against the stone. He lights the candles near the dressing table, then places the robe on the warm brick ledge near the hearth. He says nothing more. He has learned your silences are sacred in the mornings. You begin the slow ritual of rising. First, you shift your weight toward your good side. Then you grip the headboard and push, gently, slowly. The pain roars to life like a hound disturbed from sleep. Your jaw clenches. Your vision blurs. Sweat beads at your temples. You do not cry out. A nobleman does not cry out. Thomas steps forward, but you raise a hand. He stops. You need to do this part alone. Your foot touches the floor, cold and unforgiving. The sensation is white-hot, like stepping onto iron. Your knees nearly buckle, but you grip the bedpost and breathe. Once. Twice. 3 times. The pain does not subside. It never does. But it becomes something you can carry. Thomas helps you into your robe. The fabric scratches against your bare arms, but the warmth is a comfort. He then offers your cane, carved walnut with a silver handle shaped like a lion's head. A gift from your wife on your 35th birthday. You lean into it, shifting weight off your foot. Is the physician here, you ask, your voice now steadier. He arrived before sunrise, my lord. He waits in the lower hall. You nod. Of course he does. Dr. Hammett always comes early. He likes to inspect the scullery's herbs before he sees you. You begin the slow walk toward your chamber doors. Every step is deliberate, measured. A procession of one. Thomas follows behind, silent, his arms folded respectfully. The hallway is dim, the torches not yet lit. Stone walls whisper the chill of the night. Your foot pulses with each heartbeat, but you keep moving. Downstairs, the manor is beginning to wake. Servants scurry through the halls, whispering and clattering about. You hear the bark of kitchen orders, the squeak of a wheelbarrow filled with wood, the heavy thud of the butler's boots. You see Maud the laundress carry a basket of steaming cloth past the stairwell, her cheeks already flushed from the heat. They glance your way, but no one stops. No one speaks. They know better. A nobleman walking the halls before sunrise, leaning on a cane with tight lips and sunken eyes, is not to be interrupted. You reach the lower hall and find Dr. Hammett standing near the hearth, warming his hands. He turns at your approach, his face calm but alert. Lord Thornbrook, he says, bowing slightly. The inflammation persists. You lift your robe slightly to reveal your swollen foot, now wrapped in linen. The fabric is stained yellow and stretched tight. Hammett kneels without a word and begins to unwrap it, slowly. The moment the cloth peels away, the air touches your skin like fire. He does not flinch, but his brows furrow. The joint is red, bulbous, shiny. He touches the edge with a metal probe, and you gasp. Still tender, he mutters. No worse than yesterday, you reply, though the truth is unclear. Every day feels worse than the last. Hammett examines in silence. Then, your diet, my lord. It must be adjusted. I do not cook my meals. No, but you command them. You say nothing. He packs the joint in a paste of crushed winter mint and goat's milk. You smell vinegar and ash. It stings, but less than you expect. As he binds your foot again, Hammett continues, would urge more boiled grains. Lentils. Leafy greens if the kitchen has any. Less wine. Fewer meats. Fewer guests, too, you murmur, half a jest, half a plea. He doesn't smile. Perhaps. Back in your study, the windows begin to glow with pale light. You sit in your high-backed chair, foot propped on a cushion, and listen to the world beyond the manor walls. A cart squeaks down the gravel path. Chickens call out in the distance. Somewhere, a dog barks, eager and hungry. The world is waking. So are its duties. You stare at the goblet on your desk, still full from last night. You lift it, swirl the wine, then place it back down without sipping. Your foot throbs. Your mind turns. For the first time, you wonder, not about the pain, but about the life that feeds it. The manor breathes with life long before the rest of the world catches up. Its heart is 100 footsteps wide, its skin made of stone, and its veins, the people, carry water, fire, bread, and burdens. You sit near the southern window of your study, the footstool cradling your injured limb, and observe the slow rise of your estate through the chilled glass panes. The morning sun has yet to break the frost, and a grey mist clings to the trees like breath held too long. Beyond the low walls of your manor yard, the fields sprawl outward like arms in prayer, untouched, dewy, and eternal. This is your domain. You own everything the light will soon touch. And yet, you cannot walk more than 50 paces without wincing. The contradiction sits with you like an old friend. Your land is rich, your title respected, your household expansive. But every duty, every expectation, every inch of power you hold is also a weight you can no longer carry without leaning into pain. Thomas enters silently with your household ledger, a heavy leather-bound volume that smells faintly of smoke and tallow. You wave him toward the desk, and he lays it down with the reverence of a monk placing scripture before a bishop. Breakfast is being set in the East Hall, my lord, he murmurs. Your steward will join you shortly. And the physician left instructions regarding your midday tincture. You nod, but don't open the ledger. Instead, your gaze drifts past Thomas toward the corridor, where even now, servants are lining tables with embroidered linens, warming spiced cider, and arranging silver plates in perfect symmetry. Everything you see today will be curated for comfort. Everything you touch will have been handled, polished, approved. And still, everything weighs. The steward arrives in a quiet hurry, his robe swept with ash from the hearth, his hands full of scrolls. Geoffrey is a sharp man, lean, calculating, loyal. He has run the estate's logistics for 12 years, ever since your father's passing. His voice is precise, and he speaks quickly, knowing your tolerance for numbers is limited when your foot flares. We've had 2 oxen lamed from the mud near the southern pasture, he begins, not bothering with pleasantries. The Thatchers are behind by 3 days, owing to illness. The granary is secure, but the rye shipment from the north is delayed, again, and the blacksmith says he'll need another apprentice come winter. You close your eyes, massaging your temple. Geoffrey pauses. My lord, the feast. Yes, you interrupt softly. I'll be present. What's the expected count? 27 confirmed. 11 nobles, the rest court companions and house staff. We've tripled the duck orders and brought in honey from the Shirefields. Your wine from Gascony has arrived as well. Of course it has. You remember the taste already, sweet, deep, a liquid gold that clings to the tongue. You also remember the sharp bite of it in your veins afterward, the way your foot blooms with pain the morning after. Make sure there is, a lighter stew as well, you murmur. Geoffrey blinks. For the staff. For myself. A pause. A crack in the mask. But he does not comment. He bows slightly and continues with the remaining reports, his voice steady, though you sense the ripple of curiosity beneath it. Change in a lord's habits rarely goes unnoticed. By the time the reports are done, your foot is humming, a constant pulse of warning. You rise slowly, leaning into your cane, and make your way to the East Hall. The breakfast chamber is a sun-warmed space, its stone walls softened by tapestries of gold and crimson. The long oak table is already laden. Cold meats, buttered rolls, soft cheese, eggs poached in spiced wine, and preserved cherries in a crystal bowl. Everything is perfect. It always is. Lady Elenina is already seated at the far end, her fingers wrapped around a ceramic cup. She looks up as you enter, her face calm, unreadable. Your wife has the poise of royalty and the eyes of someone who has learned to see too much. She wears a deep green dress today, one you always favored, not for its richness, but because it brings color to the otherwise pale rooms of this manor. You're walking more steadily, she says, as you settle across from her. You give her a faint smile. For now. She watches you carefully. Not as a servant watches a master, but as a woman watches a man who has tried for too long to pretend strength is the same as silence. Geoffrey tells me Lord Swan arrives by noon, she continues. So he does. She lifts a spoon, stirs her drink. He'll expect you to drink with him. Hunt with him. Laugh at his jests. Will he also expect me to leap across the banquet table on one foot? A hint of amusement glimmers in her eyes. Then it fades. You don't have to perform, William, she says, softly. Not here. Not with me. The words land somewhere deep. You look down at your plate. The cheese is too sharp. The bread too soft. The meat too red. Nothing appeals. What do I have, you say quietly, if not performance? A name, she replies. A mind. A people who rely on your fairness. A woman who still loves you. You say nothing, but the words sit with you as you chew a single bite of egg, slowly, as though tasting your own doubt. Later, you walk the inner court garden, its gravel paths winding like threads between hedges and statues. This place was once a source of pride for you, designed with symmetry, layered with rare flora, echoing the gardens of French nobility. Now, it feels like another obligation, another arena where you must appear composed. A boy passes by, 12, maybe 13, one of the stable lads, carrying 2 buckets of feed. He bows quickly and averts his eyes. You nod back. Your cane clicks against the gravel as you continue. At the far end of the garden stands a marble bench. You sit slowly, exhaling as the pressure eases from your foot. From here, you can see the village just past the trees. Thin roofs. Stone chimneys. Smoke rising from early cook fires. They will be preparing bread now. Some will crush herbs for teas. Others will haul water, patch roofs, gather kindling. Their suffering is visible. Yours is not. And yet, something in you envies them. Not their poverty. But their purpose. You once thought nobility meant having everything. Now you wonder if it means having nothing you've chosen. The rest of the day passes in familiar discomfort. You meet briefly with the chaplain, who updates you on chapel attendance. You visit the armory, where your master-at-arms displays a new blade ordered from Wales. You sit through a cloth merchant's presentation, velvet samples and linen bolts stacked like small tombs. And always, the foot. Always the ache. When Lord Swan arrives, he greets you with the enthusiasm of a man who hasn't had an audience in weeks. He claps your shoulder too hard, laughs too loud, and launches into tales of boors and bishops, interrupted only by gulps of mead. You smile. You toast. You do not wince when the cup touches your lips. Dinner is a blur of sounds and scents. Silver clinks. Bread breaks. Roasted duck and buttered carrots fill the air. You listen as Lord Swan recounts a failed duel with a man from Devonshire. You pretend to be amused. Your foot swells inside your boot, each minute a drumbeat. When the hall clears and silence returns, you sit alone for a while, staring at the empty plates. The warmth of the feast lingers in the stone. You think of your wife's words. You think of the garden bench. You think of that boy carrying buckets without complaint. You wonder, not for the first time, if you were made for this life, or if you were merely born into it. You stand before the long mirror in your dressing chamber, one hand gripping the carved armrest of a chair, the other pressing against your cane. Your reflection stares back, regal, dressed in velvet and brocade, the gold of your crest stitched into the fabric like a flame trapped in thread. From the outside, you are every inch the nobleman. Only the eyes betray you. A glassy film, a subtle tightness in the brow, the way the muscles of your jaw clench with each quiet breath. The pain has not left. It will not. Thomas finishes adjusting your collar and steps back, examining you the way a blacksmith might assess a blade before it's shown to a buyer. Satisfied, he nods once and disappears without a word. You are expected now. Downstairs, the banquet hall glows with dozens of tallow candles set into iron sconces, each one flickering against polished wood and whitewashed stone. The scent of meat and spice drifts upward, a heavy fog of indulgence. Voices rise and fall in laughter, in toasts, in polite murmurs. The room is a living thing, fed by performance, dressed in ritual. And tonight, like every other night, you must feed it. The trumpet sounds as you enter, soft and ceremonial. All eyes turn. You move slowly, carefully, the cane tapping lightly against the floor with every other step. You nod to each table, familiar faces, half-familiar names, jeweled necks and powdered cheeks. No one comments on the cane. No one dares. But you feel the glance, the flicker, the quiet calculation behind polite expressions. There he is. Lord Thornbrook. Still limping. Still aging. Still weakening. You reach your seat at the head of the central table, the largest, tallest chair, backed by carved lions and thorns. You lower yourself into it with a grace practiced by repetition. The weight eases off your foot, and you allow yourself a single breath of relief. Only one. You scan the room. Lord Swan is already seated 2 places to your left, a half-drained goblet in one hand and a boisterous grin stretched across his face. He raises it toward you as if saluting. "Evening, William," he calls, too loudly. You raise your goblet in return, smile tight. The servants begin the first course. Stewed leeks in butter, followed by baked eel wrapped in pastry, and trenchers soaked with spiced beans. The room fills with the soft clatter of knives, the scraping of pewter, and the humming lull of courtly manners. You chew slowly, carefully. You feel every flavor. Too much salt. Too much oil. Everything tastes like burden now, even food, once your favorite pleasure. Across the table, Lady Elenina speaks with a visiting merchant's wife, calm, gracious, practiced. She catches your eye only once, and when she does, she holds it longer than custom demands. It is not a look of pity. It is a look of warning. As the main course arrives, roasted duck with plum sauce, white bread, and a side of apples glazed in wine, Lord Swan leans toward you. "Marvelous, William," he says, wiping his beard with the back of his sleeve. "You must tell me who cooked this bird. I've tasted nothing better since the bishop's feast in Salisbury." "I'll pass your praise to Cook Margaret," you reply, voice measured. "She'll consider it a blessing. She deserves more than that. I say, your table never disappoints. You've always understood how to live well." A strange phrase, that. Live well. You think of the paste on your foot. The sleepless nights. The physicians whispering outside your door. The way Thomas has learned to bring you water in silence, avoiding your gaze. Living well, you echo, is often misunderstood. Swan barks a laugh. Nonsense. Living well is meat, and wine, and women. And victories, of course. Especially the ones that come without swords drawn. He winks. You manage a smile. The wine is poured again. You glance at your goblet. The ruby liquid catches the candlelight, swirls gently, promising comfort and consequence. You remember the physician's voice, the calm warning of another flare, another night of fire in your bones. You lift it anyway. And sip. Because tonight, you are a host. A symbol. A lord. Your body may rebel, but your title does not. The feast continues. Musicians begin to play a soft melody, lute, flute, and a female voice weaving in between. The song is about a knight who falls in love with a widow and dies protecting her from bandits. No one listens to the lyrics, but everyone nods with approval. More food arrives. More laughter follows. Servants move like ghosts, refilling goblets, clearing plates, replacing empty bowls with new delights. There is venison now, red and tender. There are strawberries soaked in honey, tiny wheels of goat cheese, roasted almonds with cinnamon dust. You eat less than you are expected to. You smile more than you feel. As the evening deepens, you notice the heat in your foot rising again, a slow, dreadful bloom beneath the leather of your shoe. It pulses like a second heart. Your fingers curl into your lap. You excuse yourself between courses and retreat behind the tapestry to a small vestibule near the rear corridor. No one follows. You sit on a wooden bench in the dark and close your eyes. Your head leans back. The stone behind you is cold and real. You take 3 slow breaths. This is the price. The feast. The mask. The pretending. This is the life you inherited, and it has rules, old and rigid. A nobleman must never show weakness. Pain is for the lowborn. Lords do not limp in front of guests. They do not eat porridge when duck is served. They do not decline wine when it's offered. But your body doesn't understand titles. It only knows pain. You return to the hall in time for the final toast. A servant discreetly helps you into your chair before stepping away. Your goblet is raised again, and this time you do not drink. You simply hold it in the air, smile as the others cheer, and place it back down. No one notices. Or maybe they do, but they are too polite to say so. As guests begin to rise, drifting into smaller groups near the hearth and the music, Lord Swan sidles closer to your seat. "You've changed, William," he says with a sideways grin. You raise an eyebrow. "Have I? Less wine. Less talk. Less fire in you. Marriage can do that, of course." He chuckles. "But it's more than that, eh? A bit slower on your feet these days." The words hang like smoke. You pause. Then you speak, quietly. "I find that rushing often leads to foolishness. And pain." Swan watches you. Something flickers behind his smile, a hesitation, a glimpse of discomfort. Then he laughs again. Still the clever one. You don't reply. When the hall empties and the music dies, you are alone once more at the head of your table. The candles burn low. The air smells of roasted fat and smoke and old sweat. The servants clean quietly around you, glancing only once, waiting for the signal to clear your plate. You rise, slowly. Your foot feels like stone wrapped in fire. But you walk anyway. You leave the hall without assistance. You climb the stairs alone. Each step is a negotiation, a silent agreement between your will and your wound. Back in your chambers, the fire has been stoked. Your wife waits near the hearth, seated in her nightgown, reading a small leather-bound book of psalms. She looks up. Your eyes meet. No words are exchanged. You sit beside her. The fire pops once, sending a small ember upward. Your cane leans against the hearth. Your shoe is off. The foot throbs, but for now, the pain is familiar, almost expected. You stare into the fire. For a long time, neither of you speaks. Then she says, softly, "I saw you refuse the wine." You nod. She closes the book. And reaches for your hand. You wake not to pain, though it's still there, but to the softest sound in your chambers, cloth brushing stone, water being poured gently into a basin, and the whisper of bare feet across the floor. The fire has died down to a warm orange glow. You hadn't realized you'd fallen asleep in the chair. She hadn't left your side. Lady Elenina stands at the washstand, her dark hair unbraided, falling past her shoulders in elegant disorder. She wears a thick shawl over her nightdress, and the faintest line of steam rises from the silver basin she fills with warmed water. You watch in silence. Not because she demands it, but because something about the scene holds you still, like a painting you're afraid to disturb. She notices your gaze but doesn't speak. Instead, she brings the basin to your side and kneels. The shawl falls slightly, revealing the curve of her shoulder. She dips a cloth into the water, wrings it out slowly, and lifts your foot. You stiffen instinctively, but she doesn't flinch. Her hand moves with careful grace, as though handling glass. The cloth presses against your skin, warm, soothing, wet, and for a moment, the fire beneath your bones quiets. "I told Marta I'd do it myself," she murmurs. You look down at her, your wife of 14 years, the daughter of a viscount who had more books than fields, the woman who once rode a horse through a thunderstorm to retrieve her younger sister from a monastery scandal. She was never gentle with the world. But she has always been gentle with you. You don't need to, you begin. I know, she replies, dipping the cloth again. But I want to. You watch the motion, soak, wring, press. Each repetition carries more comfort than the last. Not because it heals you, but because someone sees the wound and does not turn away. It wasn't always like this. In the early years, your marriage was ceremonial, strategic, a union of land and lineage. She came to Thornbrook with a library of Greek poetry, a hawk on her arm, and a sword her father had gifted her on her 13th birthday. She said little. You said less. The first months were filled with awkward silences and overly formal dinners. You remember once offering her your arm for a feast, and she replied, "I have two of my own, my lord." You hadn't known whether to laugh or apologize. But then winter came, harsh and long, and she stayed by your mother's bedside each night, learning herbal poultices from the midwife. You saw her bare hands soaked in fevered cloth, her hair tied back with a strip of torn linen. That was the moment you stopped seeing her as a guest. And started seeing her as your house's heart. The cloth slides gently under your arch, tracing a line where the skin is cracked and red. Her face remains focused, not distant, not pitying, but present. You're still bleeding under the nail, she says softly. I know. Your physician knows, but says little. She pauses. Ring. Press. You let them feed you poison, she says. Meat layered in sugar, bread soaked in cream, wine like syrup. And then you call it pain when your body protests. You exhale, not angrily, but tiredly. It is the table we are given. It is the table you continue to fill. You close your eyes. You want to tell her that it's not that simple. That the world of nobility is like a performance stage with no curtain. Every movement is watched, judged, whispered about. Decline a course at a feast, and rumors start. Refuse a goblet, and people assume illness or weakness or treachery. Appear less than whole, and someone hungrier than you may move to take your place. But you don't say that. Because she knows. And more importantly, she doesn't care. She lifts your foot into her lap now. Gently, carefully, like cradling something sacred. She uses her thumb to press a fresh cloth along the worst of the swelling. You gasp, not from pain, but from the sheer humility of it. You are a lord, she says, but your body does not know it. I have tried. To ignore it, she finishes. To outdrink it. To laugh past it. To walk as though your joints don't crack under your own inheritance. Silence stretches between you. Then she adds, quieter, you are not weak because you change, William. You are wise if you do. The cloth pauses. Her hands still. The fire crackles once behind you. She looks up, not as a servant, not as a wife bound by duty, but as a woman who knows you in ways others never will. If you keep living this way, she continues, you will not live much longer. And if you die trying to look strong, you'll have spent your last days pretending to be a man you no longer are. The word strikes something deep. A cord tied to the boy you once were, to the man who thought power meant silence, and dignity meant endurance. You look down at her hands. Steady. Intentional. Unafraid. Later that morning, you walk with her through the inner cloister, the covered walkway between the chapel and the north tower. Your foot aches, but the cold stone beneath your boot steadies your steps. You lean more on your cane today, but less on your pride. The air is crisp, and your breath fogs before you. She walks beside you in silence, occasionally glancing at the early light catching on the chapel's stained glass windows. I had a dream, she says suddenly. You glance at her. I was old. Gray as an owl. You were sitting beside a fire, reading aloud from a book of riddles. You were still limping. You smile faintly. Not much of a dream. You were laughing. A pause. And so was I. You both keep walking. Later, over a modest breakfast, barley porridge with a dash of honey, pear slices, and clear water, you speak with the steward. He notices immediately. No duck fat. No rich breads. No cider. You are, for once, eating what the cook makes for the staff. Geoffrey hesitates only a second before proceeding with the estate updates. His eyes flicker toward Lady Elolenina once, and she returns the gaze with one that is not threatening, but firm. It is a quiet rebellion, this shift. Not a revolution with torches or raised voices, but a resistance of small choices, different food, different walking paths, different language. And yet, it feels powerful, like pulling threads from a tapestry until a new pattern begins to emerge. That afternoon, in the solar, you write in your own hand, not dictated, for the first time in months. You draft a notice to your head cook, reduced meats, increased grains, new use of the garden herbs. You suggest hosting smaller dinners, convivial, you write, not lavish. Your hand cramps by the end. But the ink on the page feels like a victory. You seal the letter with your signet. You pass it to Thomas. And when he gives you a curious look, you say only, "It's time." That evening, your wife sits with you again by the fire. No goblets between you. No feast waiting in the next room. Just the scent of rosemary from the bath water and the crackle of burning wood. She says nothing as she threads a new cloth through her hands. You offer your foot. Not because you must. But because you trust her with the part of you you can no longer hide. And in that quiet surrender, you feel something you haven't in years. Not pain. But peace. You rise just after dawn, not because pain demands it, but because something quieter does, curiosity. The fire in your chambers has gone cold. The coals in the hearth hiss when Thomas pours water into the bucket beside them. You wave him off when he offers your heavier robes. Today, you choose something simpler. Wool, unadorned, with a lined cloak and no embroidery at the sleeves. Lady Elolenina watches you as you dress. She says nothing, only offers the faintest nod when you pull on your boots yourself. "You're going out," she says. You meet her gaze. "Yes. Be careful." "I will." She closes the door behind you. The manor yard is slick with dew. The air tastes like iron and smoke, and the sky hangs low, heavy with mist but holding back rain. The ground softens underfoot as you move along the stone path that leads down the hill. You use your cane less today. It surprises you. A stable boy, not the same as before, younger, runs past carrying a bucket of oats and nearly trips over his own boots. He glances up, sees you, and freezes. "My lord." "Go on," you say, gently. "Don't let the horses wait on ceremony." He hesitates. Then nods, cheeks flushed, and runs on. Your path takes you toward the outer fields, past the walled gardens, past the old barn with its lichen-covered roof. You follow the thin trail worn into the grass, across the small wooden bridge, and into the village proper. You haven't walked this far in weeks. Months, perhaps. You aren't sure. But here you are. The first person you see is a woman pulling water from the communal well. Her sleeves are rolled to her elbows, revealing arms corded with work. Her dress is patched, her hair wrapped in a cloth that has clearly seen better years. She doesn't see you at first, she's focused on the bucket, the rope, the weight. Beside her stands a boy, 5, maybe 6, holding a loaf of dark bread with both hands. He stares at you, eyes wide. You nod to him. He clutches the bread tighter and steps behind his mother's leg. The woman finally looks up. There is a moment. Recognition. Then a quick bow. "My lord." You raise a hand. Don't stop on my account. She hesitates. But then, nods. She returns to the bucket. The water splashes softly against the sides as she lifts it from the well. You keep walking. You pass the weaver's home, a low, thatched cottage with a crooked door and a bundle of dyed wool drying on a line. Inside, through a cracked window, you glimpse a young woman bent over a loom, her foot pumping the treadle as her hands move with instinctive rhythm. Outside, a dog sleeps near the step, its ribs showing through its coat. It lifts its head as you pass, but does not bark. The village smells of smoke, bread, and earth. It is not the stench of decay or filth, though that, too, exists, but of life in its most unpolished form. Here, nothing is hidden. Hunger is not softened by linen napkins. Illness is not perfumed with rosewater. Children cry where they are born. The wind moves through every crack and thin wall. There is no gilding here, only wood, stone, fire, and faith. And yet, there is something steady about it. Near the edge of the field, you stop. A man stands bent at the waist, cutting winter kale with a hooked blade. His breath clouds in the morning air. He works with a rhythm that has nothing to do with music and everything to do with survival. His daughter, a thin girl of perhaps 10, gathers the cut leaves into a sack. She hums a song as she does it. You recognize the tune. A harvest hymn. The man straightens slowly, his back creaking audibly. He sees you. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Then he nods. My lord. Good morning, you say. He glances toward your cane. Out for a walk. Yes. Good day for it, he replies. Then adds, my back says otherwise. You smile, the first true one you've had in days. I'd trade my foot for your back, you offer. He chuckles, surprised. No, thank you. I've grown used to mine. The girl stops gathering for a moment. She eyes you openly. Then offers, softly, your foot hurts. You look at her. It does. She nods, serious. My brother's hand hurts in the winter. He broke it last spring. You crouch slightly, slowly, carefully, bringing yourself closer to her eye level. What does he do when it hurts? She considers. Wraps it. Holds it over the fire. Sometimes he just waits. Smart girl. You reach into your coat pocket and pull out a small leather pouch, dried berries, something Marta insisted you carry. You offer it to her. She hesitates. Her father nods. She takes it. Thank you, my lord. You rise again, your joints groaning in protest. The father speaks once more. You're welcome in the village anytime. You know that. You nod. Then walk on. Later, near the stream, you sit on a large stone and watch two boys skip rocks across the water. One misses every time but keeps trying. The other lands 3 in a row, arms raised in triumph. They don't notice you until the younger one trips and nearly falls in. He regains balance, turns, and sees you sitting nearby. He nudges the other. They stare for a moment. Then the older one lifts his hand in a small wave. You wave back. They return to the game. You stay longer than you mean to. By the time you head back toward the manor, the mist has lifted and the air has warmed. Your foot throbs, not sharply, but steadily, like a warning drum in the distance. But you've walked nearly a mile. You've spoken with 5 people. You've smelled bread that wasn't yours, heard laughter that wasn't forced, and felt wind that hadn't been filtered by tapestries. It isn't joy exactly that you feel. But it is something close. Thomas meets you at the edge of the courtyard, his expression taut with surprise and disapproval wrapped in loyalty. My lord, we thought perhaps. I'm well, you say simply. He glances at your cloak, mud-stained at the hem, and nods once. Inside, the manor feels colder than the village. Brighter, yes. Cleaner. But colder. At supper, you request the simple fare again. Boiled lentils. A roasted root vegetable. Flatbread. The cook raises an eyebrow but does not question. Lady Elenina watches with a steady gaze. How was the walk, she asks. Long, you reply. But, needed. Did they see you limping? Yes. She smiles. Good. That night, you write again. A letter to your steward. You ask for the village roof repairs to be moved up before the next storm. You instruct that each household receive an extra sack of oats from the storehouse, quietly. No banners. No proclamations. And you sign it with your full name. Before bed, you sit near the fire once more. Your foot is soaked and wrapped. Lady Elenina reads aloud, Psalms, again. You listen. Your cane rests nearby. You feel its weight. You no longer resent it. Because today, you learned something you had forgotten. The nobles suffer quietly. The poor suffer publicly. But only one of them is allowed to show it. And now that you've seen both, you wonder. The knock is firmer than usual. You sit at your desk, quill in hand, half-finished letter before you, a request for wood to be cut and dried early for the village schoolroom. You hesitate a moment, eyes scanning your own handwriting, before saying, enter. The door opens with a soft creak. Dr. Hammett steps inside, his winter cloak still damp at the shoulders. He carries a leather satchel in one hand and a flat expression across his thin, wind-reddened face. My lord, he says with a respectful nod. Forgive the early hour. You gesture to the chair across from you. Please. He removes his gloves as he sits. His fingers are long, dry, stained faintly with ink and crushed herbs. The kind of hands that have tended more wounds than weapons. He sets the satchel on the desk and opens it with practiced care. How was the walk yesterday? He asks without looking up. Longer than expected, you reply. But, revealing. You limped more last winter, he murmurs, pulling out a parchment and a bundle of dried leaves. But not less painfully. You say nothing. He pulls your footstool closer with a scrape and gestures toward your leg. May I? You nod. Carefully, you lift your foot onto the stool. He peels back the linen wrap, layer by layer, his hands steady. When the final cloth is removed, he leans in with narrowed eyes. His breath catches. Only slightly. But you notice. The skin around the big toe joint is red again. Redder than yesterday. Shiny, tight, almost purple. The swelling has returned, not as sharp, but deeper. As if something under the surface has decided it will not be ignored. He presses gently with 2 fingers. You flinch, teeth gritted. Still tender, he mutters. Still present, you correct. He doesn't smile. Instead, he begins mixing a fresh poultice, crushed mint leaves, powdered bark, a touch of vinegar. The smell is sharp, clean, but not pleasant. You're improving, he says softly. But not healing. You raise an eyebrow. There's a difference, he continues. Improvement means the symptoms shift. Healing means they leave. You exhale. I've changed my diet. I've walked more. Rested more. Taken fewer meals with guests. What else do you require? He pauses. Then speaks, not as a physician, but as a man who has sat beside too many deathbeds. Honesty, my lord. The words hang in the air. You study him, the tired eyes, the worn robes, the small ink stain on the cuff of his sleeve. Speak, you say. He sets down the poultice, wipes his hands, and leans forward. Your body is tired. Not from age, you're still younger than half the bishops I treat, but from the years of abundance. Rich meats, sugared wines, inactivity, and excess comfort. You live as though you are invincible. And the truth is, you were not built for this much ease. You want to protest, to say that the body was meant for joy, that comfort is not a sin, that indulgence is a reward for labor. But you do not. Because you know he is right. He continues, gently but firmly. Gout is not a punishment. It is a conversation, between your past and your present. It speaks the language of everything you've ignored. Every choice. Every excess. Every moment you let the body carry the weight of an unexamined life. You shift in your chair. Can it be reversed? Perhaps. But not quickly. And not without sacrifice. You nod slowly. Then I must begin. He studies you a moment longer. Then, softly. You already have. The dressing is applied with a cooling touch. He wraps your foot again, slower this time, pressing gently to adjust the pressure. As he works, he speaks, softer now, more personal. My father was a carpenter, he says. He used to say the worst damage comes from the things you never see. Wood rots from the inside first. You glance at him. And what became of him? Died at 50. Ate like a lord. Drank like a sailor. Laughed like a fool. You offer a half smile. At least he laughed. Yes, Hammett replies. But he died with a hand on his stomach and a whisper of regret in his breath. You lower your eyes. He finishes tying the final knot and stands. I'll prepare a tincture, he says. Herbs. Not pleasant. But helpful. You nod. You may leave it with Thomas. He bows, but lingers. Then adds, quietly, you're not a weaker man for living differently, my lord. The ones who change, they're the ones who live longer. And better. He leaves you alone in the study. You sit for some time, foot elevated, hands resting on your thighs. The fire is low, casting gold against the floor. A servant walks past the open door, glancing in. She carries a tray of folded linens. She moves quietly, respectfully, and does not speak. You look down at your hands. The knuckles are thickened now. The fingers ache in the cold. You hadn't noticed when it started, only that writing became harder, buttons slower, grasping your sword a touch more awkward. You wonder how many other things have crept in silently. And how many you have not yet named. You visit the chapel after midday. Not because of a feast. Not because of an obligation. But because it is quiet. The walk there is slow. Your foot argues at every third step. The cane clicks on the stone floor, rhythmic and hollow. Inside, the chapel is empty, the candles long since burned down, the windows glowing with soft daylight. You sit in the front pew. Not to pray, but to breathe. The air is cool and scented with wax and old wood. You stare at the altar, simple, unadorned. A place meant not for spectacle, but surrender. You do not speak aloud. But inwardly, you ask. What else must I change? How many years have I lost? And who was I trying to impress all this time? No answer comes. But something shifts. A release. As if the room, in its silence, agrees with you. That evening, you cancel supper. Instead, you take a bowl of lentil stew in the solar. Alone. Lady Elenina joins you halfway through. She says nothing at first. Just sits beside you with her own bowl, steam rising between you. The scent is earthy, warm, plain. Hammett visited, she says eventually. You nod. He says you've begun healing. He says I've begun listening. A pause. Same thing, she says. You smile. Together, you eat in peace. Later, before sleep, you write again. Not to the steward. Not to the kitchen. But to your son, away in apprenticeship, learning estate law in Canterbury. You write not as a lord, but as a father. You tell him of the foot, the food, the physician. You tell him you were wrong to hide pain. You tell him that leadership is not strength without truth, but strength in truth. You end the letter with a simple line. When you inherit this house, may you inherit its lessons as well. You sign your name. And for the first time in many years, the ink dries before the guilt sets in. What else have you missed from behind your manor's stone skin? You wake to rain. Not a storm. Just the steady, rhythmic tapping of droplets against glass. The sky is a dull silver, and the air in your chambers holds the damp chill of early spring. But your body is calm. Your foot, wrapped gently in new cloth, is neither pulsing nor screaming. It simply exists, present, but not tyrannical. You sit up without wincing. You stand without gripping the bedpost. And as Thomas enters with the wash basin, he pauses mid-step, noticing you already upright, hands clasped behind your back as you gaze out the window. "My lord," he asks. You turn toward him and offer something rare, a smile before breakfast. "I'll take the small boots today," you say. He blinks. Then bows. "Of course." The change begins subtly. You decline the morning wine. You request warm water with lemon balm instead, a mixture your mother once drank to calm her nerves. Marta smiles quietly as she pours it. You suspect she's been hoping you'd ask for years. You eat slower. Less. No one comments. But the servants exchange glances. They also say, he adds, that the villagers have stopped fearing the bell. That the steward of Elmwick has begun to smile. That his lord's footsteps are heard in places they were once forbidden. You set your quill down. And you? I say, he pauses. I say the house breathes easier. And that we should let it. You nod. He bows. And says no more. By week's end, your foot aches again, after a walk to the western fields. But you expected that. You sit in the garden, breathing through it, watching the light scatter through new leaves. A bee lands on your sleeve. You don't brush it away. You sit still until it moves on. That evening, a letter arrives from your son. He's read your words. He's surprised, yes, but not scornful. He writes that he's proud, that he always feared he'd inherit a title but not a father. He closes with, "Teach me more before you teach me to rule." You read it twice. And then a third time. Lady Elolanina reads it with you. Says nothing. Then folds the paper and places it in your journal. The chapel fills that Sunday. Not with nobles, but with the house staff, the cook's family, 3 village women, and a shepherd boy who sits cross-legged near the back. The chaplain's voice echoes warmly, not formally. You sit among them. Not above them. No one says a word about your cane. No one says a word about your chair being the same height as the others. And in the silence between prayers, you feel the weight of something new. Not duty. Not pain. But presence. In the days that follow, your meals grow more deliberate. You begin helping the steward with ledgers, not just approving them. You speak with the stable hands about the horses, not just their names, but their needs. You ask about births. Illnesses. Rain patterns. Roof leaks. You send firewood before it's asked for. You forgive a fine that was overdue. You remember the name of the girl who hummed at the well. Her name is Faye. You send a ribbon to her house. Not as charity. As memory. The next time Lord Swan visits, he arrives expecting the usual, duck, wine, trumpets, and politics. Instead, he finds you at the garden's edge, seated beside a shepherd boy watching ants build a bridge across the stone path. You look up and say, "You're welcome to join us. But we're not discussing tariffs." He stands awkwardly, unsure. Then he laughs. And sits. That night, you watch the fire beside your wife. She reads. You listen. You ask for another psalm. She turns to page 63. When she reads the words, "My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness," you both smile. Because you now know satisfaction comes not from richness, but from restraint. You still carry the cane. You still wear the crest. You are still Lord William Thornbrook of Elmwick. But you are no longer a prisoner in your own house. You no longer eat to be admired. You no longer drink to be seen. You no longer perform. You live. Quietly. With purpose. With grace. And perhaps, with just enough pain to remind you never to forget where you began. The hall is quiet. For the first time in years, it holds only silence. No music. No clatter of plates. No shouted laughter echoing off the stone. Just the soft creak of wood as you walk the length of the table, slowly, your cane clicking lightly beside you. The long table is bare. No tapestries hang from the walls today. The silver candelabras are polished but unlit. There are no pheasants laid in sauce, no goblets waiting for toasts, no fruit polished to unnatural shine. Only space. Only memory. You reach the high-backed chair at the head of the table, carved with lions and vines, the family crest still bold across its crown. You run your hand along the armrest, worn smooth by years of hosting, judging, enduring. It used to feel like a throne. Now it feels like a costume you outgrew. You do not sit. You simply look around, at the chairs that once held dukes and merchants, priests and fools. You remember their faces. You remember their hands lifting wine. You remember their glances, subtle and silent, when your cane appeared the first time, when your appetite thinned, when your smile cracked. This was the cage. Not the walls. Not the duty. But the performance. And now it's unlocked. The morning passed quietly. You walked the southern path with your steward, discussing repairs to the village bridge. The rain had done its damage, washed out one of the supports. You approved the timber. You sent extra hands. Later, you met with Margaret in the kitchens. She asked if the rosemary broth was still preferred. You told her yes, and thanked her for remembering. You wrote a letter to the bishop's clerk, not to petition, but to offer. There's a young boy in the village who reads faster than anyone in your house. You've asked they consider him for schooling in the capital. You didn't think a lord could sponsor a peasant child without upsetting someone. Now, you don't care if it does. In the early afternoon, you found yourself near the old garden, the one your mother planted before your father's passing. You hadn't walked its length in years. The roses were overgrown. The ivy had claimed the bench. But beneath it all, something lived, something resilient, like the marrow of memory. You pulled a few weeds with your bare hands. And when the steward walked past, you didn't stop. You just said, "I never did like the yellow ones." He didn't reply. But he smiled. Now, standing in this empty banquet hall, you feel the weight of all you've learned pressing gently, not on your shoulders, but deeper, at the center of you. You once feared being less than your title. Now, you fear forgetting what your pain taught you. You walk to the far wall and open the tall shutters. The evening light pours in, amber and soft, filtered through a slow-setting sun. Dust dances in the air. Outside, the fields stretch like old parchment, golden at the edges. You can hear sounds, faint, but real. A child laughing. A cartwheel rattling. The bark of a dog chasing something unseen. This is what the manor never allowed in before. You close your eyes. You breathe it in. Later, you sit in your favorite chair near the hearth. The one with the embroidered arms, where the wood creaks in just the right place when you lean back. The fire crackles, not roaring, just steady. Lady Elenina sits nearby, reading again. This time not scripture, but something older, a tale from her childhood. Her voice is soft as she reads aloud, and you don't catch every word. That's fine. The sound alone is enough. Your foot is wrapped, elevated, warm. It hurts, as it always does. But it no longer rules you. You think of the man you were one season ago. A man who dressed in wealth and called it strength. Who fed his fear with wine. Who silenced his body until it screamed. Who thought power came from fullness, and presence from noise. You forgive him. He didn't know better, but you do now. You rise with care. You step to the window. Outside, the last of the sunlight clings to the tops of the trees. Below, the torches are being lit along the manor path. Not for show. Just to guide the cook's boy home. The village is quiet but alive. You see Faye near the well, carrying a pail too big for her arms. A stable hand runs to help her. You see the carpenter placing the final board on the bench near the stream. You see the light from the chapel windows, still glowing with the last of the sun. And somewhere out there, your son is reading your letter. Learning, perhaps, not how to lead with a title. But how to live with purpose. You still limp. But now, each step has meaning. Tomorrow, the world will ask for more of you, it always does. But tonight? Tonight you sit by the fire. You feel the ache in your bones and welcome it like an old companion. You hold your wife's hand. You listen to the house settle, to the rain tapping gently again. And far beyond the walls of the estate, where the fields meet the edge of the world, life goes on. Unseen. Unmeasured. Unadorned. But real. You smile. Not because it's finished. But because it has finally begun.